and then meeting Yvonne and marrying her, you were still drinking steadily at this point?
Oh, yes.
Would you drink every day, or did you have some periods when you weren't drinking?
No, every day. They all knew I drank.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them to know how much. So I would hide or back up somewhere. I would have a backup bottle everywhere.
The year is 1991. A man stands in his own living room. A gun shakes in his hand. His wife and 2 children freeze in terror. They're thinking the same thought. He's going to shoot us. But here's what makes this moment even more shocking. This man isn't a criminal. He's not a stranger. He's Maurice Gibb, 1/3 of the Bee Gees, the group that gave the world Stayin' Alive, the voice behind some of the biggest hits of the 1970s. And in this moment, he doesn't even recognize himself. His 16-year-old son Adam would later tell television cameras those exact words. I thought, oh my God, he's going to shoot us. What drove Maurice Gibb to this breaking point? What secret had he been hiding from millions of fans around the world? And how did a single drink, offered by one of the Beatles, set off a chain of events that would nearly destroy everything he loved? The truth is darker than anyone imagined, and it starts long before that terrifying night. If you love stories about the real lives behind the music, the struggles, the secrets, and the comebacks, then you're in the right place. This is Retro Waves, where we dig deeper than the hit songs. Hit that subscribe button, because stories like Maurice's need to be told. And trust me, what you're about to hear will change how you listen to the Bee Gees forever. Maurice Gibb seemed to have it all. Born on the Isle of Man in December 1949, he came into the world just 35 minutes after his twin brother Robin. From the very beginning, the two were inseparable. Add in their older brother Barry, and you had the foundation of one of the most successful music groups in history. The Gibb family moved around, first to Manchester, then to Australia. It was there in Brisbane during the late 1950s that the brothers really found their sound. They called themselves the Bee Gees. They played local shows, they worked hard, and by 1963, they had their first record deal. By the time Maurice was in his 20s, he was a star. The Bee Gees had international hits. They were on television, they were rubbing shoulders with legends. Maurice played bass guitar, he played keyboard, he sang those soaring harmonies that made the Bee Gees sound like no one else. From the outside it looked perfect, but something was happening behind closed doors. Something Maurice tried to hide, something that started small and grew into a monster he couldn't control. It began when he was just 17 years old. The Bee Gees were in London, riding the wave of their early success. One night, Maurice met John Lennon of the Beatles. Lennon was already a superstar. He was cool, he was confident, and he offered Maurice a drink, a Scotch and Coke, the Beatles' favorite. Maurice later said something chilling about that moment. If he had given me cyanide, I would have drunk the cyanide. I was so in awe of the man. That's how much he idolized Lennon. That's how eager he was to fit in with the rock and roll lifestyle. He took the drink, and then another, and another. By the time Maurice was 25 years old, he was an alcoholic. Now you have to understand, this was the late 1960s and early 1970s. Drugs and alcohol were everywhere in the music business. It was almost expected. The more famous you got, the more pressure you felt, and the more you needed something to take the edge off. For Maurice, that something was alcohol, scotch, mostly, and brandy. He drank to cope with the constant touring. He drank to deal with the pressure of creating hit after hit. He drank because everyone around him was drinking. But Maurice's drinking wasn't just casual partying, it was something darker. It was a need, an escape, and it started to show. His first marriage fell apart because of it. In 1969, Maurice married Lulu, another pop star. They seemed like a perfect match. But the marriage didn't even last 4 years. Maurice's partying lifestyle, his drinking, put too much strain on the relationship. Lulu couldn't take it anymore. Maurice was heartbroken, but instead of slowing down, he drank more. The 1970s should have been Maurice's golden years. The Bee Gees reinvented themselves. They became the kings of disco. Songs like Stayin' Alive, How Deep Is Your Love, and Night Fever dominated the charts. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack sold millions. Maurice was on top of the world, but inside, he was falling apart. During live shows, Maurice was sometimes so drunk that he couldn't see straight. According to his brother Barry, Maurice would have to feel his way along the wall just to get to the stage. There were times when he fell over completely. His brothers Barry and Robin would cover for him. They protected him because they loved him and because the show had to go on. Maurice knew he had a problem, but he didn't know how to stop. And then, something happened that made everything worse. In 1975, Maurice met Yvonne Spenceley. She was a former Miss Edinburgh. Beautiful, strong, and completely unaware of what she was getting into. Maurice fell hard. He proposed to her after just 3 months. They got married in October 1975. Maurice promised her he would change. He wanted to be a better man. He wanted to be a good husband. For a while things seemed better. Yvonne gave birth to their son Adam in 1976. Then their daughter Samantha came along in 1980. Maurice loved his children deeply. He wanted to give them everything. He wanted to be the father he never had time to be while touring the world. But the drinking never stopped. Morris would disappear for days. He would go on what his family called benders, drinking marathons that lasted for weeks. He would lock himself in hotel rooms. He would drink until he passed out. Then he would wake up and drink again. Yvonne didn't know where he was half the time. She would get phone calls from strangers saying they found Morris collapsed somewhere. She would have to go pick him up. She would bring him home, clean him up, and then watch him do it all over again. The kids started to notice. Adam and Samantha could see their father wasn't like other dads. He was gone a lot. And when he was home, he wasn't really there. He was distant, moody, sometimes angry. Morris tried to hide it from them. He tried to act normal, but alcohol doesn't let you hide for long. By the late 1980s, Morris's drinking had gotten completely out of control. His brothers Barry and Robin didn't know what to do. They had tried talking to him. They had tried threatening him. Nothing worked. Morris would promise to quit. He would say he had it under control, but then he would disappear again. The Bee Gees' career was suffering too. Recording sessions were a nightmare. Morris would show up drunk, or he wouldn't show up at all. Barry and Robin had to work around him. They had to record his parts when he was sober enough to function. Fans had no idea. To the world, the Bee Gees were still legends, still icons, still the group that defined an era. But behind the scenes, the family was breaking. And then came that night in 1991. Morris had been on a month-long bender, days and days of drinking, maybe weeks. No one knows exactly how long. He was at home with Yvonne, Adam, and Samantha. The house should have been safe. It should have been the one place where Morris could let his guard down. But alcohol doesn't care about safe spaces. Morris was drunk, really drunk, and something inside him snapped. He pulled a gun on his wife and children. Morris himself later admitted to the BBC, "I was waving a gun around and stuff like that, and normally I don't even like guns." His son Adam described the terror of that moment on television. "I thought, oh my God, he's going to shoot us." Yvonne was scared. The kids were crying. Morris was yelling. He wasn't making sense. He was completely gone. Somehow they got through that night. Yvonne and the children left immediately and went to Brother Barry's house, refusing to come back until Morris had done something about his drinking. After that night, something changed. Yvonne had enough. She told Morris, "This is it. Either you get help, or we're done." She meant it, and Morris knew it. He had already lost one marriage because of alcohol. He wasn't going to lose another. He wasn't going to lose his kids. So in 1991, Maurice Gibb checked himself into a rehab facility. It was one of the hardest things he ever did. Going to rehab meant admitting he had a problem. It meant telling the world, or at least the people around him, that he wasn't in control, that he needed help. For someone like Morris, who had spent his entire life performing, putting on a show, and being Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, this was devastating. But he did it. He went through detox. He went through therapy. He faced his demons. And here's the thing about rehab, it's not just about stopping the drinking, it's about figuring out why you started in the first place. Morris had to look back at his life. He had to ask himself hard questions. Why did he feel the need to drink? What was he trying to escape from? There's some speculation, though not confirmed, that part of Morris's struggle came from being a twin. Morris and Robin were born together. They grew up together. They performed together. But Morris often felt like he lived in Robin's shadow. Robin was the emotional one. Barry was the leader. And Morris was just Morris. He once said in an interview that he felt like the middle child, the one who got overlooked. Was that true? Or was it just how he felt? We may never know for sure. But there was another reason Morris's drinking got worse in the late 1980s, a reason that broke his heart. In 1988, Morris's youngest brother Andy died. Andy Gibb had been a star in his own right. He had hit songs in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but Andy struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, and unlike Morris, Andy never made it to rehab in time. Andy died at just 30 years old, heart problems caused by years of drug abuse. Morris was devastated. In an interview, Morris acknowledged that his final years of alcohol abuse had been driven by his failure to reach Andy before his death and his subsequent guilt. Morris blamed himself. He thought maybe if he had been there more, if he had been sober himself, if he had set a better example, maybe Andy would still be alive. The guilt ate away at him, and he drank even more to forget. That's what led to the gun incident in 1991. That's what finally pushed Yvonne to walk out. That's what forced Morris to face the truth. He was killing himself, just like Andy had. Morris went into rehab calling Yvonne and telling her he was going to stay because he wanted to stop drinking. She said that was the call she had been waiting for. Morris stayed in rehab for several weeks. When he came out, he was different, not completely healed. Addiction is a lifelong battle, but different. He was sober, he was clear-headed, and he was determined to stay that way. Yvonne saw the change. The kids saw it too. Morris started spending more time at home. He started showing up for family dinners. He started being present. The Bee Gees also noticed. Barry later said that getting Morris sober was like getting my brother back. They could finally work together again without worrying if Maurice would show up drunk or not show up at all. To celebrate his recovery, Maurice and Yvonne renewed their wedding vows in 1992. The ceremony was attended not only by many members of their families, but many of the friends Maurice made while at the rehabilitation center. In the years after rehab, Maurice became quietly open about his sobriety. He didn't preach about it. He didn't go on talk shows and make a big deal out of it. But when people asked him, he was honest. He admitted he was an alcoholic. He admitted he had almost lost everything, and he warned others not to make the same mistakes. Maurice said he still went to regular meetings for alcoholics and would remain sober until his death. That's 12 years of sobriety, 12 years of showing up for his family, 12 years of proving that he could beat the addiction that nearly destroyed him. But the damage had already been done. His relationship with his kids was strained. Adam and Samantha loved their father, but they had seen too much. They had been through too much. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. Yvonne stayed with Maurice, but their marriage was never quite the same. She had been through hell. She had lived in fear for years. Even though Maurice was sober, she couldn't forget what had happened, and Maurice himself carried guilt for the rest of his life. He knew what he had put his family through. He knew he had hurt the people he loved most, and no amount of sobriety could erase that. But Maurice didn't give up. He kept working. He kept creating music. He kept trying to be better. And then in 2003, everything changed again. January 8, 2003, Maurice was having dinner with his family when he felt stinging pains in his stomach. At first he thought it was just indigestion, maybe something he ate. Nothing serious. The pain passed. Maurice didn't give it a second thought, but later that same day, the pain returned with a vengeance. Maurice collapsed at home, screaming from the pain. Yvonne called emergency services. They rushed him to Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach. The doctors ran tests, and what they found was serious. Maurice had an intestinal blockage caused by a twisted small intestine, a condition called volvulus. The autopsy later revealed that Maurice was born with a malformed intestine, a rare birth defect that can lead to life-threatening kinks. Maurice needed emergency surgery, right away. But just before the surgery, Maurice suffered a heart attack. The doctors tried to save him. They performed the surgery anyway, because the blockage had become life-threatening. The surgeons removed a portion of his small intestine to clear the obstruction, but Maurice never woke up. On January 12, 2003, at the age of 53, Maurice Gibb died from cardiac arrest at Mount Sinai Medical Center. The official cause of death was ischemic enteropathy, a condition where the twisted intestine restricted blood flow to his bowel, which led to cardiovascular collapse and cardiac arrest. It's very uncommon. What happened to him? Said Dr. Jeffrey Raskin, interim chief of gastroenterology at the University of Miami Medical School. Some people close to Maurice have speculated, though this is not confirmed by doctors, that years of heavy drinking may have weakened his body, that the alcohol may have done damage that never fully healed. But the official medical reports state that Maurice died from a birth defect he didn't even know he had. Barry Gibb was devastated. He had just lost his younger brother, his bandmate, his friend. The three brothers had been together since childhood, and now suddenly there were only two. Robin Gibb was equally heartbroken. He and Maurice had been twins. They had shared everything, a womb, a childhood, a career. Robin later said that losing Maurice felt like losing a part of himself. Yvonne was shattered. Despite everything they had been through, the drinking, the threats, the fear, she had loved Maurice. She had stood by him, and now he was gone. Adam and Samantha lost their father. Yes, he had put them through hell when they were younger. Yes, he had scared them, but he had also fought his way back. He had stayed sober. He had tried to make things right, and now they would never get more time with him. The funeral was held in Miami, where Maurice had been living. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects. Fellow musicians, friends, fans, everyone wanted to say goodbye to the man who had helped create some of the most iconic music of the 20th century. Barry and Robin both spoke at the funeral. Barry could barely get through his speech. He talked about how much Maurice meant to him, how much he would miss him, how the Bee Gees would never be the same without him. Robin spoke about their childhood, about being twins, about sharing a bond that no one else could understand. He said that part of him died with Maurice that day. Yvonne didn't speak publicly, but those who saw her said she looked completely broken. The world mourned Maurice Gibb. Tributes poured in from around the globe. Radio stations played Bee Gees songs non-stop. Fans left flowers outside his home. The music industry had lost a legend, but for those who knew Maurice personally, the loss was much deeper. They didn't just lose a musician, they lost a husband, a father, a brother, a friend, and they lost him too soon. Maurice was only 53 years old. He should have had decades left. He should have seen his grandchildren grow up. He should have made more music. He should have had more time, but life doesn't always work that way. After Maurice died, people started asking questions. Why didn't anyone help him sooner? Why did his family let it get so bad before he went to rehab? Why didn't the Bee Gees take a break so Maurice could get treatment? These are fair questions, but they're also complicated. Addiction doesn't work the way people think it does. You can't force someone to get sober. You can beg, you can plead, you can threaten, but until the person is ready to change, nothing will work. Maurice's family tried, Barry and Robin tried, Yvonne tried, but Maurice had to hit rock bottom before he was willing to accept help. And for him, rock bottom was that night in 1991 when he threatened his family with a gun. Some people have criticized Yvonne for staying with Maurice. They say she should have left him sooner, that she put her children in danger by staying, but anyone who has loved an addict knows it's not that simple. Yvonne loved Maurice. She believed he could change. She wanted to help him. And when he finally did get sober, she was there to support him. Was she perfect? No. Did she make mistakes? Probably. But she did the best she could with an impossible situation. As for Barry and Robin, they've both spoken about the guilt they carry. They wonder if they could have done more, if they should have stopped touring, if they should have forced Maurice into rehab years earlier. But again, addiction doesn't work that way. Barry and Robin used what they called tough love tactics to make Maurice realize he had to seek professional help. They isolated him. They refused to enable him. And eventually it worked. Maurice's story is a tragedy, but it's also a reminder of something important. Addiction can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter how famous you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much people love you. If you're struggling with addiction, you need help, and the sooner you get it, the better. So what's the lesson here? Maurice Gibb was a talented musician, a loving father when he was sober, a dedicated brother, a husband who tried his best, but he was also an alcoholic, and that addiction nearly destroyed everything he loved. The question people always ask is, could it have been prevented? Maybe. If Maurice had never taken that first drink from John Lennon, would things have been different? If he had gone to rehab sooner, would he have avoided that terrifying night with his family? If the music industry hadn't glorified drinking and partying, would Maurice have felt less pressure to fit in? We'll never know. What we do know is this: Maurice's story is not unique. Thousands of people struggle with addiction every single day. Some of them get help, some of them don't. Some of them survive, some of them don't. Maurice was one of the lucky ones. He got 12 years of sobriety. He got to repair some of the damage he caused. He got to spend time with his family. He got to make music again. But he also lost years to addiction. Years he can never get back. Years his family can never get back. Today, Barry Gibb is the only surviving member of the Bee Gees. Robin died in 2012 from cancer. Maurice died in 2003. Andy died in 1988. It's just Barry now. And Barry has spoken often about his brothers, about how much he misses them, about how the Bee Gees were more than just a band. They were family. He's also spoken about Maurice's struggle with addiction. He said that Maurice was ashamed of it, that he didn't want people to know, that he tried to hide it for as long as he could. But Barry believes Maurice's story should be told, not to shame him, not to sensationalize his struggles, but to help others who might be going through the same thing. Because if Maurice's story can save even one person from making the same mistakes, then maybe, just maybe, his suffering wasn't in vain. Yvonne Gibb has remained mostly private since Maurice's death. She's rarely given interviews. She's rarely spoken publicly about their marriage or his addiction, but according to sources close to the family, she carries no bitterness. She's said to be proud of Maurice for getting sober, grateful for the years they had together after rehab. She wishes he had lived longer, but she's at peace with how things ended. Adam and Samantha have both moved on with their lives. They've built careers, they've started families, they've carried on the Gibb legacy in their own ways, but they've also been honest about the pain their father caused. And that honesty is important, because pretending everything was perfect doesn't help anyone. Maurice Gibb's addiction tore his family apart. That's the truth. But his sobriety brought them back together. That's also the truth. Both things can be true at the same time. Maurice Gibb's story is a reminder that addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're a superstar or an everyday person. It doesn't care if you have millions of fans or just a handful of friends. What matters is whether you're willing to ask for help and whether the people around you are willing to support you. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, please reach out, talk to someone, get help. Don't wait until it's too late. And if Maurice's story moved you, if it made you think or feel or remember someone you've lost, leave a comment below, share your thoughts, share your story. This is Retro Waves. We tell the stories behind the music, the real stories, the hard stories, the stories that matter. Hit that subscribe button if you want more content like this, because legends like Maurice Gibb deserve to be remembered, not just for their music, but for their humanity. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's never too late to ask for help.